Welcome to Chapter 26. In Chapter 26, we're going to talk about polymers. In this lecture, we're going to do a quick introduction and go through some examples of polymers. One example of a polymer that you're probably familiar with is polystyrene. Polystyrene is a polymer of styrene, and it is used to make things like styrofoam cups and packing peanuts. Styrene is the monomer, meaning that several equivalents of styrene react to form the polymer chain. And if you look at polystyrene, you can see that it's essentially just styrene over and over and over again. You'll see a couple of different ways that polymer chains are represented. Sometimes you see the little dots on the ends. Sometimes you see squiggly lines. Let's highlight the repeating unit. The two carbons of styrene are here, 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 and here. So you can see that all of the carbons in the original styrene monomer are represented in the polystyrene polymer. You're probably already quite familiar with several naturally occurring polymers. For example, proteins are polymers of amino acids. Polysaccharides are polymers of sugars or saccharides. And DNA is a polymer of nucleotides. Remember that the nucleotides contain a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. In polystyrene, we saw that styrene was the monomer. That means that it takes several styrenes to react multiple times and form the polystyrene polymer. You can see that this is represented in a couple of different ways. We talked about using that ... to represent the repeating chain. You may also see these parentheses implying a polymer chain. There's a little N down here, which can represent the degree of polymerization. If it just is listed as N, then we just kind of assume that it goes on multiple times, but sometimes there's specific numbers associated with that. Either of these are appropriate ways to represent the polymer chain, and we would say that styrene reacts to form polystyrene. There are two main types of polymers. The first is chain growth polymers. Chain growth polymers are produced by a chain reaction, meaning that the reaction gets started and then continues. We initiate these reactions with a radical, an acid, or a base, and you'll see that we don't lose atoms in these types of reactions. Also, for chain growth polymers, our monomers typically contain an alkene. The other main class of polymers is step growth or condensation polymers. Step growth polymers differ a little bit from chain growth polymers. The first key difference is that in step growth polymers, the monomers can react independently. So you don't have to have a chain reaction in this process. And I'll show you what I mean in just a little bit. We also don't require an initiator. A lot of times these can just react together by themselves. We also see with condensation polymers that atoms are lost. That's typically because these types of polymers are produced via nucleophilic addition-elimination reactions, so we're eliminating some atoms. That means that we typically see a carbonyl functional group. We already talked about styrene as being an example of a chain growth polymer. And so you can see that we don't lose atoms in our chain. We have the same number of carbons and hydrogens here as we do in each repeating unit. We can also see that we have an alkene functional group. And when we talk about the mechanism for formation of polystyrene from styrene, we'll see that we need an initiator to get the reaction going, and we'll see that we have a chain reaction mechanism. Here's an example of a polymer called dacron. Dacron is a good example of a step growth polymer. You see that we have a carbonyl functional group. Also, we are going to lose atoms. In the formation of this polymer, we lose methanol. This is also a reaction that doesn't require an initiator. You can see the two reagents here, and when we heat them up, the reaction can start going. Also, you can see that these two starting materials can react separately, so you don't have to wait for a chain reaction to occur.